All right, so I'm here with my acoustic guitar in hand, and I realized that it's probably better that I show you a video of what I'm doing so that you can see what my hands are doing. So I'm going to record a video at the same time as I record this audio, and I will upload it to YouTube and put a link in the show notes of this podcast. So if you want to see what my hands are doing when you hear the different things that I'm explaining, you can click the link and watch the video, and hopefully that'll be helpful for you. Okay, so let's jump into the 6 ways. Let's jump into the 6 ways that you can utilize your acoustic guitar to its full potential. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to start by playing through a song and showing you all the different techniques in action, and I will more than likely stop and explain what I'm doing along the way. And then afterwards, we'll do a brief recap of the different points in a more systematized, structured explanation type way. So I'm going to play through Paul Baloche and Brenton Brown's song Hosanna, Praise is Rising. And so I'll just jump right in, I'll play, and I will stop along the way to explain the different techniques that I'm using. So the song starts like this. Okay, so before we go on from the intro, so instead of just starting the song full on open strum, that doesn't give the song anywhere to go, right? So you want to create dynamic. You want to start quiet and kind of thumpy. And so what am I doing? Well, I'm strumming shallow. I'm only strumming 3 strings at a time. I'm palm muting, so it's not letting the guitar resonate. And I am doing a little melody line with my fingers, so it's kind of adding some interesting texture. Instead of just going, I'm going. Okay, so that's the intro. So that kind of gets this sort of pulsy vibe going to it. And so let's jump into the verse. Praises rising, eyes are turning to you. We turn to you. Hope is. So that's just a little. I paused for a second. You know, kind of like don't strum. You leave a beat open, and it kind of feels like okay, there's a little change. And then it jumps back into the verse. By the way, there's construction going on at our church, so if you hear some beeping in the background, I'm sorry. Hope is stirring, hearts are yearning for you. We long for you. A couple things that I want to show you right there. So when I get to that, it would be the D chord because I'm using a capo. It's I'm kind of opening up the palm muting a little bit, so it's really muted here. Dun, dun, dun. And then I'm muting it again really tight. When we see you, we find strength to face the day. In your presence, all our fears are washed away. Okay, so a couple things there. I did the 5-chord shape instead of playing it like a D like this. See you, we find strength. I played it like this, like an open C chord. When we see you, we find strength to face. So it's like open strum, oh, open strum, and then back to the tight. Right? It makes it interesting. When your presence, all our fears are washed away. Build, washed away. Hosanna, Hosanna. You are the God who saves us, worthy of all our praises. Okay, so right there, I get to the chorus, and now I'm doing the full open strings, open strum, and my strumming on the first chorus, I'm just doing straight down strums. I don't want to make it too complex because then I have nowhere to go later. So just down strums, and I'm accenting the 2 and the 4 like the snare drum. So Hosanna, right? that's another little thing you can do, is you can kind of act like the snare. So you're doing like a fill almost. So so that's the chorus. So Hosanna, Hosanna, you are the God who saves us, worthy of all our praises. We long for in your kingdom, broken lives are made. You make us new when we see, we find strength. So let's talk about verse 2. So I didn't want to go back to this, because that would just be the same thing that I did the first time, and that's not interesting to your ear, because your ear gets bored easily. So verse 2, I did sort of a palm mute on the first part, and then open strings on the bottom. So it's kind of like hear the sound. And because there's no singing there, I'm going to open it up a little bit for that D chord. You make us new. And I'm using my pointer finger and my pinky finger to alternate some of those higher pitch notes on the high strings, to kind of just give you some ear candy. And then when we get to the second half of verse 2 or verse 3 or whatever it's called, it would be obnoxious to do the exact same thing again. So now I'm just going to change my strum pattern a bit, and I'm going to go in your kingdom, broken lives are made. So I did all straight down strums, and I kind of like built the intensity. So it's just, you're creating movement. You're using your guitar, you're using your picking hand, your strumming hand, and your fingering hand to create movement, to create mood, to create energy, instead of just playing up, down, down, up, down, down over and over without any changes. Because you want to really, like I said, utilize your guitar to the full potential. So, all things new. And then pre-chorus. When we see, we find strength, we face the day in your presence. So what I'm doing there is it's like a whole strum, and I'm kind of I'm doing some subdivision there. Straight down, I'm not doing up, down, ups. I'm just doing straight down, and then back to that. In your presence, all our fears are washed away, washed away, Hosanna. And that's another thing you can do, but you can use your guitar like it's a drum. That's why I say acoustic guitars are percussive in nature. So when we see, we find strength to face the day. And you can just leave it open, in your presence, because it's really down. You don't need to keep strumming, you just leave it open. Just outline the chord changes. Do when we see, and now you can build it. When we see, we find strength to face the day, even the hardest days. I say that every time, by the way. In your presence, all our fears are washed away, washed away, Hosanna. chorus, not down strums only. Now it's like it still needs another layer. So now I'm going to do up and down strums. Right? Hopefully that was somewhat helpful. So let me just talk through a couple things I was doing. So dynamics. The first way to utilize your acoustic guitar is to utilize dynamics. That means the loudness and the softness, the intensity or the lack of intensity, the complexity or the lack of complexity. So a couple things that I mentioned. Don't always strum all the strings. If you just strum shallow first, I'm just strumming 3 strings there, then when I strum all of the strings, it actually matters. If I'm just strumming all the strings all the time, it doesn't matter. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't add anything because it becomes monotonous. So strum shallow. Use, just a couple strings at a time. Now, something I will say, and I know maybe this will offend you because you're like a very talented acoustic guitarist, but I see a lot of worship leaders when they play in the G shape or whatever, or even not the G shape, they don't mute certain strings. You have to mute certain strings. So for example, when you play the C chord or the C2 in the key or in the G shape family, you have to mute the E string. Otherwise it sounds like that. So I see a lot of guys, or even when they play the D, they're strumming all of the strings all of the time. You can't do that. You have to mute certain strings. So when you play the C, don't play the open E. And when you play the D, don't play the open E or the open A. Just play the lower ones. So that's just super important, but that's not what my main point was. My main point was don't strum all the strings to create dynamics. Strum shallow, and then strum all the way open for the choruses or something like that. So try strumming shallow for the verses. The second thing I would say about dynamics is try finger picking. So like if you're going to sing the song, Jesus, Jesus, which is an old song, but I'm old, so there you go. If you do that, like don't start with a full strum. Like don't do that. Start with just finger picking, And I'll say something about finger picking. Our ears like stability. They don't like too much variety, so pick a common tone. So if you noticed, every time I changed chords, I was always still playing that note. So that note. Na, 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 na. Our ears like a common tone. They like stability. So when you finger pick, try to pick a common tone and work around that tone with your chord changes. So, but try finger picking with the beginning of songs that are quiet, so that you have somewhere to go later. Okay. The second thing about dynamics is try palm muting. So palm muting is what I was doing at the beginning of Hosanna. It's just laying your palm on the bridge of your guitar, covering the strings so they don't resonate. That's not palm muted. That's palm muted. And you can vary the intensity of the palm muting. So like, and then open it up here. So palm muting is another way to create dynamics. So don't just play full strum, all the strings the whole time. Create dynamic. So that's one way to utilize your acoustic guitar to the full potential. The second way is strumming patterns. If you noticed in Hosanna, I went from simple to complex. So the first chorus, I went all down strums. And I mentioned that I was using the 2 and the 4 beat as like the snare hit. And the way that you do that is you play the bottom strings and then you play the top strings on the 2 and the 4. So strumming pattern, simple to complex. So maybe start the first chorus just straight strumming, shallow strumming, meaning not all of your strings. And then the second chorus, maybe do the full set of strings, but still straight. And then for the last chorus, do complex and full. So that way the song changes as it progresses. It builds in intensity and complexity. So strumming patterns, and I would say too many worship leaders I know, and I'm probably guilty of this, we have our favorite strumming pattern or strumming patterns, and we only do those. But really try to learn some different strum patterns, and I'll try to find some resources to put in the show notes for you guys to learn different strumming patterns. The third way to utilize your acoustic guitar to its full potential is different chord shapes. And I want to just say this to worship leaders everywhere. It's really important that you are able to play in the actual keys of a song, because I know a lot of worship leaders, they just put the capo on and they play the G shape for every single song. Like I've even seen some famous songwriters in Nashville, when they play a song, they always use the G shape. But every key family or every chord family has its own set of feelings and nuances. And I would encourage every worship leader to learn how to play all the different chord families. So learn all the chords in the key of D, learn all the chords in the key of A, learn all the chords in the key of G, and be able to play those different chord families. And I'll show you a couple examples here in a second. But don't be one of those worship leaders who just keeps moving the capo up the neck and strumming in the G family chord shapes, because you're missing out on something. You're not capitalizing on something that God has put into this instrument that allows you to have different feelings and to bring out different nuances and feelings for different songs. So let me just show you an example of that. So Come Thou Fount is an old song in the key of, I played in D. So I'm in the key of D, I'm playing in the D chord shape, so that would be D, G, A, B minor, right? So that's the chord family. See how those chords have a certain feeling to them? So, come thou fount of every blessing. How do I play this? Come thou fount of every blessing, to my heart to sing thy grace. So that's one way you could play it in the D family, or you could put a capo on, and you could play it in the key of D using the C shape chords. Come thou fount of every blessing, to my heart to sing thy grace. See, it feels totally different. It's a totally different feeling, even though it's the same key, but it's using a different chord shape family. Or you could put the capo way up here and play it in the G shape, G family. So the same key of D. Come thou fount of every blessing, to my heart to sing thy grace. So I think my personal favorite is in the C family. So learn the different chord families and learn how to use a capo to capture the feeling that you want for the song. Find which chord family feels best for that song and really be able to utilize different chord shapes. Speaking of chord shapes, there are some really cool chord shapes that you can use. So for example, like when we were playing Hosanna, we were in the key of A, but I'm playing in G now. So when I went to the pre-chorus, when we see you, we count down, da da da. So that's just a C chord up in the 5 position. And it's nice. It's different. I also see a lot of worship leaders, they do this, and it's like, that's great, but sometimes it's good to play the E minor like this. like actually, you know what I mean? Or the C, sometimes it's better to play it like this instead of like this. So it just depends on the song and the feeling that it needs to be conveyed, but be able to play those different shapes. But here are a couple other cool shapes that not a lot of people know about, and this is where that YouTube video might come in handy. So if you want to see, you can click the link. So you could play the QD like, or you could play it like this, which is much more interesting. Or like in the key of G, you can do like, let's say our God is greater. So that's E minor instead of, it's like this. C, G, so that's the one chord. Instead of playing G like this, you go, and D. So those are different shapes to play the same chords. Also notice that I was able to play the G up on the neck. So know your way around your fretboard. See that? Same note. So be able to play depending, like for Our God is Greater, I like to do that. Like, and if our God's in, what can stand again? Right? That's more cool than. So learn different chord shapes and be able to play them around the neck. I will say too about the capos, like if you want to check out our free capo cheat sheet, you can download that at worshipministrytraining.com/resources. There's a capo cheat sheet there. And there's also the chord families cheat sheet there as well. You just enter your email and you can download all that for free. The other thing I wanted to talk about is to utilize your acoustic to its full potential is walking notes. And you saw me do that in Hosanna, where I was like, so I'm using my bottom fingers to play some walking notes. And you can do that up high or down low, like, but here are a couple examples of how you can use walking notes. So like for Everlasting God, in the bridge, or not the bridge, but in the instrumental part, won't grow weary. Cool. And then also in like the stand, like used to be for and carry the cross for my shame, my sin weighed upon your shoulder. So that's just some nice ear candy. Now, if you have a full band, you might not need to do some of that stuff. But if you're just by yourself, it adds a lot. And then you can also do some of those walk downs on the lower strings too. So like, something like that, okay? So use walking notes, and I guess they would be called passing tones. So learn some of those passing tones and be able to just add some ear candy to your guitar playing. The other thought that I wanted to share, the other way to utilize your guitar to its full potential, is to do some percussive fills. Like I was telling you in Hosanna, you know, it was like, you can do stuff like that, or even while you're actually strumming the song, so you can be like, you are the God who saves us, worthy of all our praises. So it's like a snare hit. Or if you were doing like Our God is greater, our God is stronger. as a snare. So those are just little things you can do. So a couple other tricks before we wrap up. You can also stop playing. That's a trick. Is let your band fill in some of the sound. Or like before a chorus, you can stop. So I'm trying to think of a song as an example. Teach my song to rise to you when temptation comes my way, when I cannot stand or fall on you. Jesus, you're my hope and stay. Right here, ready? So just a little stop there. It sucks the energy out of the moment so that when you hit on the downbeat, it kicks back in and it feels even stronger than if you had played all the way through that moment. So stopping before a chorus. Or like I said, if you're playing with the band, don't always play. Lay out a little bit. Maybe lay out the second verse. Yeah, a lot of times I'll start playing first verse, and then when we get to the second verse, I'll lay out, and it just feels different. And then I come back in on the chorus, so it adds the energy back into the mix. So those are the 6 ways to utilize your acoustic to the full potential: dynamics, strumming patterns, chord shapes / capos, walking notes, percussive fills, and a couple other little tricks. I probably left some stuff out, but I feel like this is a good, at least a good primer, a good place to get started. So if you have any questions or thoughts or comments, you can email me, alex@worshipleadertraining.com. Be sure to check out alclair.com for custom molded in-ear monitors at incredible prices, and they sound fantastic from what I hear. So enter WMT podcast at checkout to save 10%. Other than that, check out worshipministrytraining.com to see all those free resources I talked about in this episode. And I will see you next month for another great episode. Thank you guys for being listeners. Please share this episode with your friends. I would love it if you could share this episode with as many people that you think would be helped by it. All right, God bless you guys. Have a great month.